Aloha. I would first like to thank all of our commissioners on our Game Management Advisory Commission for allowing Pele Defense Fund to be here tonight, giving you some history of the beginning, the birth of your commission, and how it started. And I think this is important. I apologize for Palikapu not being here. He's away on some other business. But I'm here to help with this historical information for you. First of all, I wanted to explain who Pele Defense Fund is. Pele Defense Fund was organized in the latter 70s by Mr. Palikapu Deadman, who was known for supporting Native rights, beginning at Kaho'olawe as they were initiating in 1978, 1979, the bombing of Kaho'olawe. And himself and Emmett Aluli and a lot of other Hawaiians that found bombing that particular island was not something they wanted to have continue, challenging the federal government, military, in trying to stop this initiative. They managed to do that for years. 10 years later, they were able to have the military stop in their 80s by promoting and supporting the idea of traditional customary practices and the detriment of bombing an island that was filled with sites, cultural sites, EV, artifacts. And this is the initiative that started this group of people, Palikapu Deadman. At the same time, in 1978 and 79, Ka'u, where he is from, also there were also concerns in Ka'u, and him being there and organizing the initiative on Kaho'olawe saw it important for Hawaiians in that area to also stand up and challenge. There were several development that was being done in Ka'u. One was the rocket launching. Several times, in fact, they had the proposals for rockets to be done in Ka'u. Hotels that were going to be built on Punalu'u Beach, and several different issues that also took them to the geothermal development that was happening down in Puna. And at that time, with their success and lawsuits promoting traditional customary practices and also fighting for their rights, set precedent with Pele Defense Fund in lawsuits that they managed to win. During the time of geothermal, it was an initiative where Pele Defense Fund stood up for their customary practices with the belief of a deity being disturbed, desecrated, and disrespected. And successful in this issue, in this particular concern, Pele Defense Fund, in fact, the only organization that was able to, in law, Pele Defense Fund versus Campbell, set precedents in law on their traditional customary practices for Vaukele Opuna. At the time when they first started the initiative with Pele Defense Fund, it started with the community of Volcano community. They were the first community that was concerned about the development near Kaho'olea and near Volcano National Park. At the time, there was a lawsuit going on. There were court cases going on, and they fought Pele Defense Fund and with the community of Volcano while they were in the courtrooms fighting this issue of desecration of a deity, Tutu Pele, she decided to blow. And at that time, while in the courtroom, Pu'uo'o event was formed. And Kaho'olea, where the development was going to be done, was actually the geothermal pad where they were going to be drilling, and that's where Pu'uo'o was formed. So fortunately, they were, this all ended with Tutu Pele at the time actually inundating lava in that entire area. And then Vaukeleopuna started. And this is Campbell, after drilling in Kaho'olea, moved. They did a land swap of moving this initiative with one company. So they swapped a state lowland forest, the only lowland forest for development, and to develop geothermal. And this swap to Pele Defense Fund and many community members was illegal to do a land swap. And they fought, and there were over 200 people that got arrested during their protest. Also, we had kupuna, children, family members that were totally against the development of geothermal because of, number one, the desecration of a deity, two, environmental issues, which at that time, geothermal was emitting their toxic emissions into the air. And with the fight of the community, they were able to bring the emissions and injecting it into the ground. But with all of this, Pele Defense Fund set precedents and won this case on the merit of a traditional customary practice rights. And right now in Vaukeleopuna, the only lowland forest, is the only place that you can go and hunt without DLNR coming to tell you not to do that, because it is a place where you can gather. You can hunt, you can gather without being cited by any enforcement because of Pele Defense Fund setting precedents. Okay, now that I'm going to do explaining the history of Pele Defense Fund and why we're talking about GMAC. In 2011, although there were years in 1990 of hunters concerned of eradication, Hamakua, we had several hunters at that time that were fighting the idea of eradication, also the idea of fencing. This was an ongoing issue for our hunters at that time. Because Pele Defense Fund was fighting the issue again in 2011 with the proposal of another geothermal plant with a company called IDG, community came to Pele Defense Fund's meeting in the mall at my gallery. We met in the back. That was pretty neat, where we had a central place for everybody to meet. But the hunters heard about the fact that geothermal was being challenged at that time by Pele Defense Fund and the people of Puna. And in 2011, we had Tony Sylvester. I think you know Tony. Tony Sylvester was concerned about that, about the eradicating of the aerial shooting of the sheep on the mountain. At the same time, we had Joseph Griffiths, Ivan Gomes, and Danny Rocha, who was fighting the issues on fencing near their areas, Pumaka'ala. We had fencing in Ka'u. You know, all of these issues were something that our hunters wanted to talk about. So Joseph Griffiths, along with other hunters, decided to have their meeting at Nanimal Gardens, and came and saw Palikapu Dedman and I, as they wanted to learn a little bit more about how Pele Defense Fund they're challenging with Article 12, Section 7. I think I'm going to read this. This is important before I start reading how we developed your commission. Article 12, Section 7 was done in 1978, where it states all the native rights of our Hawaiian people, the host people, and the use of land. Article 12, Section 7 was at the very end, and this is the first thing that you'll learn about customary practices. Article 12, Section 7 says, the state reaffirms and shall protect all rights customarily and traditionally exercised for subsistence, cultural and religious purposes, and possessed by ahupua'a tenants who are descendants of the native Hawaiians who inhabited the Hawaiian Islands prior to 1778. There's a latter part of it that says subject to the right of the state of Hawaii state to regulate such rights, which I believe is DLNR. These rights that our Native Hawaiians have has been very successful in the idea of managing the resources that our Hawaiians managed to do hundreds of years prior to Western contact. Even after the overthrow, our Hawaiians were able to feed over 1 million Hawaiians. Now, how was that without having imported goods coming into Hawaii? They knew the land. They were the land. And this is something that I think our legislators and our lawyers and attorneys should understand when we say we are the land. We were the host peoples that came to the islands. We created a system along with spiritual practices. Does that make any sense to anyone? What does that mean? It means when you govern your land and its resources, it was protected with the belief of a spiritual practice. That is exactly what I needed to talk to you about and why GMAC was created this way. Because for generations, our Hawaiians have had to deal with the depletion of resources because they were not allowed to practice their culture by maintaining their resources with the spiritual practice. They did it that way. I think every culture does that. When the Japanese came into Hawaii as plantation workers, they had very little acculturation. Why? Because even though they were not from Hawaii and they moved here to work, they managed to keep their spiritual practices till today. Very little acculturation to their practices, and which was proven in the University of Hawaii to be the reason why they have the best health in Hawaii. Our plantation ancestors that came over to work and kept their spiritual practices. They were able to keep their spiritual practices, brought it with them, even though they did not come from here. Now, you're going to have to understand, our Hawaiians, we live here and we're not able to practice who we are because of our circumstances. So in 1978, when our Renaissance leaders, they don't like to be called Renaissance because a lot of them are still alive, like Palikapu, who fought for these native rights to be who we are in our own land. We cannot be who we are in our own land because the laws do not permit us to do that. When the hunters came to Pele Defense Fund in 2011, they knew that they needed the help for this because fencing was being done all over this big island. Fencing that was being promoted by several conservation special interest groups, environmental groups. When the hunters came to Hawaii, to Pele Defense Fund, we had so many hunters at the time. They actually did some protests in front of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, fighting the eradication and the aerial shooting and the fencing. So what we did to help them was to teach them a little bit about the rights of our traditional practices, why we would call hunting not hunting, but gathering, because it's gathering your resources. We have the rights to gather. It is protected. Our Hawaiian people have the rights. It is our right to gather, whether it's fish or hunting. So at the same time, we had the fishermen who had also their issues. In Ka'upuleo, they had several closures, meaning they were going to go from A to B in Ka'upuleo, and they were not going to allow anyone to fish. Closed for 10 years. It was a 10-year ban. So at the same time, we had fishermen that were coming to our meetings because they thought the same thing, just like the hunting. How can you stop us from fishing when it is our right? And are we the problem? That was a concern. Are the hunters and the fishermen the problem? Are our pipi, our pua'a the problem? When you have fencing up, you interrupt the migration of our pua'a. And they come down to the residential area where we cannot shoot or hunt. So this was a huge concern for our hunters. They got together with one political leader, and his name was Dominic Yagong. I called Dominic with Palikapu to come to meet us at at Papamu Gallery with Pele Defense Fund to write legislation for our hunters and our fishermen. And it is Bill 260 and 261, the no aerial shooting bill and the verbiage for the Game Management Advisory Council. So, 260, this is our concern. At the time that Dominic wrote this, he was running for mayor against Billy Kinoi. It was very political. And at the time, it was a hype. We had council meetings. We pitched a tent outside in the parking lot to feed those so that people could not leave. We were here at 7:30 in the morning. We had over 100 testifiers. And at that time, it was Pele Defense Fund helping the geothermal protesters and the Puna community and the hunters. We all helped each other at that time testify for each issues. We managed to pass 4 legislative bills those 2 years. The most important was the Game Management Advisory Council. At that time, we had to put it on the ballot. We put it on the ballot, and we had 39,000 voters voting for a Game Management Advisory Council. Why did we do it for the county? Because it was for a home rule idea. It was a home rule idea to be able to have our county support no aerial shooting. It was also county support where we wanted to be able to have a closer relationship with our county council members and our people. It's hard for our people to go to the state level, to go and testify. It is hard for us to do that, but to have it at our county level, it was a great idea for home rule. So at that time, we added the verbiage of traditional customary practices to the Game Management Advisory Commission verbiage, which we believe should be, first and foremost, your reason for existing. And why I'm saying that is because our Hawaiian people knew how to manage their resources even before Western man. with spiritual practices. Now and this is the issue. I know you've read that before, but it needs to be front and foremost in your center vision, because it's going to help you help your hunters, your gatherers, and your fishermen. We don't like to use the word hunters when it comes to using your customary practices, because it is gathering your resources. It is gathering your resource, and you have the right to do that for everyone. So with the fishermen, it's not only hunters. GMAC was not only for the hunters, it was also for the fishermen. It was for gatherers. And that is something that we wanted to remind all of you, is that issue. I'm going to give you an example of what happened. We had a hunter that was being investigated of transporting and replenishing. Why can we not replenish our resources as it's being taken? Why not? You put closures and hope that it comes back together again, or why don't you put replenishment? Replenishing back to your forest as well as your ocean. Why? Because we do not have a game management plan for the state of Hawaii. Now that is 2011. This is the hunter's issue from day one. No game management plan for the state of Hawaii. We are the only state in Hawaii without a game management plan. Are we going to let that continue? Well, at the time, the Board of Land and Natural Resources, it was Bill Isla, chair, that stood on the opposite side of our hunters and fishermen, saying they're mandated to eradicate. They're mandated to do this. They're mandated to do that. Well, if you're mandated to do something without a game management plan, then you will always have your problems. You have your Japanese brothers that are coming from Japan showing you how to take care of your pigs. It is not about trapping. It is about the laws that you don't have in place. It is about the laws and rules and regulation that is allowed by our government and the Department of Land and Natural Resources, who are enforcers. They're not the managers. There's a difference. Enforcement, managing. Two different things. If you do not have laws that manage your resources, we will always have this problem. To help our economy, to help our food resources, how can our hunters and fishermen and people that are ranchers use their resources if they don't have the opportunity to add value to their resources and their products? Add value, how do you do that? Game management plan, meaning you work with the feds to be able to allow your food and resources. We only have 2 slaughterhouses. You have to have your pua'a come alive. You cannot have it tainted. You cannot have it bloody, because it gets tested. Now, all of these is not because we have an abundance of pigs. It's because we don't have a plan as to how we're going to manage our resources, our pigs, our fish. You're going to take from the ocean. This is our culture. Then you should replace it. Hilo is damaged. Our shoreline is damaged. We have no fish. I should know. I fished when I was a little girl here in Hilo. I know where all the fishes are. They're not there. We don't have species anymore. Does the state think about replenishment plans? No, because East Hawaii is not designated a priority district. What does that mean? Monies and funding does not come to East Hawaii because we are not designated by the feds and environmental special groups like Nature Conservancy for resource protection. That is the reason why Pele Defense Fund worked with the hunters. Home rule. You can use this verbiage that we stuck in there with Dominic to help our game management council. Home rule. You work closely with the hunters and fishermen. You should allow them to help you, help them manage it well. DLNR is enforcement. They're not managers. That's their job. And how are you going to do that if you don't have a plan? Any questions? Oh, there's a difference. There's a difference with practitioner. There's a difference between practitioners. You cannot just get one kumuhula just because they pound one ipu. Anybody can do that. On the Board of Land and Natural Resources, Mr. Sam Gong, sorry. You need someone that understands what the practice is, and that is usually handed down traditionally. Someone that actually practices the belief of Pele, someone that actually practices the belief of Kanaloa from the ocean, the person that actually practices in front of their shrines, that has been doing that and know how to do that. And they're not there just entertaining. You can get anybody to do that. So there's a difference. If you're going to find somebody to talk about and called a practitioner, they better be a criteria for that. And that is what's wrong with all of this. At every level, Board of Land and Natural Resources, DAR, at every level, NARS, right? They have a traditional customary practices. When we started pushing this, they started to shove people to cover the puka. These guys are not qualified. So who writes the books for qualification? Who does that? The very people that keeps the state of Hawaii without a game management plan. Any questions?
When you said Native Hawaiians for the gathering and cultural and
Yes.
spiritual rights, would that include people that were born and raised here, or is it just exclusive to the Hawaiian?
Well, that's why you have to read your Article 12, Section 7. It's a state constitution, law. It's not a rule. It's not a regulation. And this is what it says.
Terri, this is
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Although the constitutional right states Native Hawaiian, it doesn't mean any other nationality cannot abide by those laws because it's our constitution.
Right.
Because it protects Native Hawaiian, it also protects the rest of us that want to exercise our gathering rights.
Well, there's a difference. Let me define that. There's a right for a Native Hawaiian, and there is the law for conserving your resources, where you can participate in that. You have to abide by the rules and regulations that are brought up to you by the state of Hawaii legislators. But this law, it was a constitution in 1978 that specifically says, the state reaffirms and shall protect all rights customarily and traditionally exercised for subsistence, cultural and religious purposes, and possessed by ahupua'a tenants who are descendants of Native Hawaiians who inhabited the Hawaiian Islands prior to 1778. I think that's very, very specific. So one of the things that we were going to work on to help our hunters and fishermen, and we can adopt you can go with us, you know what I mean, is the fact that you allow a Hawaiian their exemptions. Why isn't the state of Hawaii allowing our Native Hawaiians, just like the Native Americans, to have exemptions? Now, if you had a game management plan, like all the other states have, they include that to their game management plan, is the fact that Native Americans have a card that says they have the right to gather for subsistence only, not for commercial use. Subsistence only, not for commercial use. Why don't we have that? Now, if the Hawaiian decides to go over there and start to practice, you can bring your cousins, your uncles and aunties that are Filipino that are not Hawaiian to be with you. Just take the Hawaiian. You see what I'm saying? Why is it not being done here? Pele Defense Fund has been working on this exemption for a long time. Why are we not doing that? And why is this? Because game management plan is not available. Manage, not enforce. Enforce is power already. That's penal system. I stood in a courtroom with a lot of the hunters and fishermen that have violated regulations from fishing with a small net or even a spear. Took his son to go show him how to spear in a little pond. DLNR took them to court. Now, there's no separate court for our customary practices. You go to criminal court. Did you know that? Our hunters and fishermen go to criminal court. They stand with all the criminals. Now, how does that make me feel as a Hawaiian, standing there knowing that it is my right, and I have to be in front of a judge telling me, you're going to pay for violating a rule and regulation. Rule and regulation is different from state constitution. This is not being abided by. And it should start here at the Game Management Advisory Council. And this is what we're here today. Any more questions?
Yeah, George Dunn of District 9. You're encouraging us to take multiple steps here, right? Starting with creating game management plan. So how would we go about doing that on a county level?
Oh, that'd be great. We can help you with that. This is where you work with your hunters, your fishermen, your native gatherers to create a home rule plan that will help you partner, not beef, partner with enforcement, partner with DLNR, with DAR, OHA, ground level, county level.
Nani here.
Yes.
For years now, as GMAC has been in existence, we've been fighting and fighting and fighting for a game management plan. And we've been hounding the DLNR. We've been writing letters. We've had so many testimonies about it. They're so resistant. So that's the problem we're having, is their resistance to make a game management plan. That's the problem.
May I ask you a question, Nani? Who is writing this? The people or GMAC?
There's been different committees wrote different game management plan proposals, draft plans, and then they got changed by the DLNR, so they were unacceptable, and so it just kept being unresolved. So, in fact, I have one right here. There was a committee of hunters, and that worked on it really hard, but the DLNR keeps just letting it fall.
Well, this is where you're going to need the help of your people. Home rule. You're nearest your people. They're not at the state level. They're here. They're down in Kilkaha, in Puna.
But the
Waiakea.
DLNR does not want a game management plan.
It's not about what DLNR
No,
is.
I know, but
Okay,
that's-
it is about what your people are talking about. And this is where you have your people come here and support you. The power of the people in everything you do. There were 39,000 voters that put you into place. The same power they had here on the voters' ballot can do exactly that again. It's the people. You need to engage them. That is basically what home rule is. They're not flying a plane to the state of Hawaii to go and pay smoked meat, sell smoked meat, Kalua pig so they can get the plane. They're here. They need to be in your rooms. They need to be here and listening to them about the issues and get them to support you. Do legislation. Do a referendum on your ballot like they did before. I haven't seen one like that yet. Have you done one? since its inception. Since GMAC's inception, did you do a legislative bill and a referendum?
Yeah.
This
yeah.
is Teresa. Nani,
HCR 22. We got that through to value our,
Nani, the game management plan, is that the initial plan or is that a revised plan that the DLNR had done? The plan you have it.
there was an initial plan and then a DLNR revised plan, which had a lot of problems in it as far as, you know.
So did the committee meet again and go over the changes that the DLNR had done? Has there been an actual workforce on the management plan?
I'd like to invite Tom up to explain that a little bit.
What? Go ahead.
Before we move on, I just want to let everybody know that we are hitting 45 mark, and we are.
Sorry. Did I talk too much? You said yes.
But
Well, that's what you get for not putting me up here a long time ago.
but to answer that question, I'll have Nani or Tom
Okay.
answer that right now.
Oh, no, they can answer it later on her report. Terry, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you for
I'm not
being
here
here.
to point fingers. I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
Because-
I
Yeah,
hope,
no, we know that.
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
I hope you'll keep meeting with us and keep reminding us. And
Sure.
find out a way that we can bring the hunters back here because we'd love to have them back
And
here.
let me tell you, you keep the hunters engaged, they'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.